So I mentioned in the last video that I don't have any experience with Mark Slow Rust Blue. So reading the instructions included with the chemical, reading the instructions online at the Mark website, it was sort of unclear to me whether I needed to put this in a controlled humidity environment or not. And one of the things that they say in the instructions, that if you're living in a high humidity environment, like for instance down south, that you don't need to put this into a cabinet or a humidified cabinet, because the ambient humidity is high enough that the rust chemical will work the way it's supposed to. Well, this is New England and it's April, and in April my humidity is around 25 to 35%, which is really, it's low, and it's on the low end of the scale for the Mark chemical. So I contacted the company and I was explaining to them the situation and explaining to them the sort of ambiguity that I saw in their instructions. And basically, he just verified what it said in the instructions, that you can do it, you can probably get away with it, but you're going to get a more controlled color or more controlled bluing process if you were to put it in a humidified cabinet. So I thought, all right, it's, like I said, it's April, let's go ahead and do this so I can get this project done for this customer. So I'm thinking, well, how do you build a humidity cabinet? And I went online and I looked at a lot of places, a lot of resources, and everybody had all kinds of ideas. And initially what I was going to do was use my hot plate, a bowl of water or distilled water in a stainless steel pan, and then I was going to make a box out of plywood. Well, the problem with all of that is I end up with one more thing that I have to store, and I'm thinking I'm just going to build it, tear it apart, and do it all over again. I got to thinking, well, there might be another way to do this, and I want to show you what I came up with. I thought, well, why not use my powder coating oven? Because I can turn the powder coating oven down to warm or down to a low temperature. The instructions for Mark says it needs to be around, it says room temperature to 90 degrees. I can do that with this oven. The other thing about the oven is it has steel racks. So in the steel racks, I can put my water into the lower rack, and then the powder coating oven is designed so that you can hook your components or your parts that you're powder coating to that upper rack, hang them, and then the hot air can surround the part that you're trying to powder coat and get a nice even coat. So that's what I think I'm gonna do. I'm gonna hang the components. I'm gonna hang the knife blade and the bolsters from this on a wire over the pan of water. I'm probably going to get a low pan, maybe a 1-inch or a 3/4 inch pan, fill it up with water, put it in here, and then hang the knife blade over that. Turn the temperature up to 90 degrees, which I should be able to do. Warm the oven up so that it's at 70, 80, 90 degrees, and then just let it sit there for the 2 hours that the instructions suggest is good for the slow rust to occur. And then after that 2 hours, take it out, card it just like you do a regular blued steel using the regular process. And then he recommends putting it in once, twice more, depending on what the color is that you're looking for, or how deep you want that bluing to be. When I'm done, I clean the inside of the oven, put it away, and I'm good to go. And that way I don't have to build a box. I've got the oven that I'm going to use. The Mark Lee instructions call for holding the temperature between 90 and 100 degrees, and the ideal humidity is 40 to 60%. So I did some experimenting. The first thing that I did is I put just a bowl of water in here, turn the oven up to 100 degrees, 90 to 100, and I just let it rest there for a while. Well, all that did was dry the air out, or dry the atmosphere out in the oven, and it didn't bring the humidity up like I thought it might. So I went and got my wife's tea kettle and filled it up with water, put it on my hot plate, and then I boiled the water in the tea kettle. And then when the water was boiling, I filled up this stainless steel pan that I use for blowing, put it in the oven, and then cranked the heat up to 90, 100 degrees, and then left it there, and it brought the humidity up to roughly 45–50%, which was perfect. It was what was required by the instructions. The question then was, would it hold that temperature for 1 hour? Because the instructions require that you blew the part in room temperature, insert it into the humidity box, and then allow that humidity to come up gradually to that 40 or 50%, and then be able to hold it there for that 1 hour. So I did that experiment and put the water and turned the oven up, as I said, allowed it to come up, and then watched for an hour. Just let it sit for that 1 hour and see if it held both the temperature and the humidity. Well, the oven did a good job at holding the temperature because it's an oven. The humidity, what I found was after about 35 or 40 minutes, the humidity started to come down. So the plan is to have, while that is in the oven, I'm going to boil another pot of water, have a second bowl available, and when I see that humidity start to drop, then I'll just switch those bowls, and I think we're going to be able to hold it for that 1 hour that the Mark Lee instructions ask for, and then hopefully we can get that rust that we're looking for, that controlled rust that we're looking for. All right, that experiment done, let's go ahead and give it a try. All right, I'm ready to put on the first coat of Slow Rust Blue chemical, and I've done a little bit of prep first, and the first thing that I did was make 3 hooks to go inside the humidity cabinet, and I need to be able to hang these parts so that they're not touching anything. So I made 3 hooks out of a coat hanger, no big deal. So this first go-around through the humidity cabinet requires 2 coats. They want me to put on a thin coat, let it rest for about 15 minutes, then put on a second thin coat, and following that second thin coat, then we're going to put it inside the oven, inside the humidity cabinet, so that it'll rust. And once it's in the humidity cabinet, it wants that to rest there at those humidity levels that we were talking about here a couple minutes ago for an hour to an hour and a half. At that point, they say that you'll begin to see a slight rusting or a slight coating. So we're going to let that happen. Then following that, we need to boil it for 5 minutes, and then after boiling it, then we'll do the carding. All right. So let's go ahead and get that first coat done. first coat of the slow rust blue is done, and for one coat it actually came out beautiful. I showed it to the owner, wanted to make sure that we were on the right track. He approved of it, he likes the look of it, so we're going to put on one more coat to darken it and to enrich that color just a little bit more. Mark Lee recommends up to 5 coats. In this case, I think 5 coats might make it a little bit too dark. Again, I have very little experience with this, so I'm sort of kind of winging it here just a little bit. Before we do that, I'm going to wipe it down with alcohol because Neil touched it, I've touched it. I want to make sure the oils from our skin don't get onto the steel. The instructions recommend that you let it rust in the humidity box, or my oven in this case, for 2 hours this time, so we'll do that. At the end, I'll bring you back, I'll show you the finished product, and I think it's going to be really beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to give the alcohol a little bit of time to flash off, maybe a minute at the most, and then I'll add the rust blue chemical to the finish. As I mentioned earlier, the bluing and boiling process leaves a bluish haze over the metal, and that's sort of the residue of the bluing process. The last thing we have to do is something called carding, and as I mentioned, carding is simply using a very fine steel wool or a very fine wire brush to go over the steel and to remove that haze to get the luster back into the metals. I typically use the 3/0 or 4/0 steel wool. It works well for me. I don't do a lot of sort of large amounts of bluing, so when I do it, I use the steel wool. It gives me a little more control, a little more finite control than using a wire wheel, and I'm trying to cover those things with a wire wheel. So let's go ahead and let's card these things. Now the idea of this slow rust blue being used on Damascus steel is it leaves a silver black finish as opposed to the black finish that the standard bluing does. And what's nice about it is you can see the grain structure of the Damascus steel through it, and it leaves enough of a gray or silver color to it that it sort of mimics that Damascus feel. Boy, that's pretty. I'll do some close-ups when we're done. Boy, that is pretty. Holy cow. Of course, I have to remove the residue from both the back and the front. Now, the Damascus pattern on the bolsters are fairly tight or small in width. They're pretty narrow. So it doesn't quite show as dramatically as it does on the steel blade itself. All right, let's do the blade. For what it's worth, Dan did sharpen this blade, so I'm trying to be as careful as I can not to cut myself. This second coat did make it a little more lustrous, if that's the right word. So it is deeper, and the silver is a lot more silver, just like the description for the slow rust blue is. I mentioned I was using this. If I didn't mention it, I'll mention it now, that I'm using this as an experiment for a Damascus shotgun that I'm restoring. I'll talk about that here in a few seconds, but I've never blued Damascus before, so this was just a really great way for me to get some experience with it. All right, this is pretty. So stick around until the end, because I'm going to oil these up and shoot some close-ups. So at the end of the video, I'll show you how this came out. Very nice, very cool. If you watched to the end, thank you. Don't go away. I do want to show you the final results on that bluing. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I really encourage that you do so, because we've got some really fun projects coming. One of the first is this Ithaca double barrel shotgun. It's a Damascus steel barrel. It's been in the same family for nearly 100 years, and they're asking that I do a complete restoration. They actually want to start using that shotgun again in honor of the grandfather, which I think is really cool. And I've said in one of my earlier videos, that kind of project sort of tugs at my heart. So I really gives purpose for what I do. Another project that I've got going right now, I'm working on a team. We're doing some work for a major museum in the Midwest. That involves plastic. These ebony and ivory pieces of plastic, and it's starting out in these plastic blanks. I'm milling those or machining those to very particular dimensions to go on a piece of furniture that is being recreated for the museum. And if I get a chance, the museum hasn't given permission yet for me to film any of this. I'm hoping that we get that worked out. I want to get you to see the work that my friend is doing. He's actually managing the project, and he's doing all of the final assembly of this thing. So that's really cool. It also involves another friend who's a professional furniture maker, and if I can get into both of their shops, this will be a really fun project and a really fun story to talk about. I've also got a shotgun, an over and under shotgun. Customer brought in. He's got a crack in the stock, and he wants me to repair that. I'll show you that project going through. That'll be a one video kind of thing. It's not a really big big crack, so it won't take a lot to do. I've also got a new pad that I'm putting on for one of our regular customers. He asked me to do that, so I'll kind of go through that again. I've done that. I've already done a couple videos on that, but we'll do a really short video on that stock as well. Also, summer is coming. I have some personal projects that have been stored away all winter that I want to get out of storage and start working on those. I'm going to share at least some of those on this channel as well. This channel is all about art, craft, and engineering, and in all of that involves so much more than just the firearms. It also involves these projects that I'm doing for the museum, as well as my own personal restoration work. So again, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing that. Ring the bell so you get notified the next time I post a video. Otherwise, we sort of disappear into the algorithms, and we would like you to know when these videos go up. So thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.